Zoetek Medical, and we're here to talk about preventive maintenance that can be done on your Tuttnauer Autoclave by the user in between the annual PM that will help prolong its functionality and its appearance. So we're going to start out first of all with our daily regimen, which is pretty simple. First of all, we want to start with a cold start, so often people will do this first thing in the morning. What we want to do is we want to open our door, unscrew our lock, slide it over, and open the door. And then we're going to take some distilled water. I always use distilled water with a sterilizer for everything. We take some distilled water and a clean damp rag, dampen with the distilled water, and we want to wipe the sealing surface here where the gasket is going to seal against, and we want to wipe off our gasket as well. Over a period of time, impurities that get into the water and into your steam will cause crusty material to form around on here and on your gasket, and can cause leaks and make it not function up to its peak performance. So every day it's a good idea to wipe those down. Give a good wipe with your distilled water. Other than that, we may want to do a little wipe down of the whole unit itself. So distilled water is also recommended, and maybe even if you want to, a mild cleaning solution, mild soap solution. Wipe down the whole outside of the unit, keep it nice and clean. And if you have a disinfection procedure at your facility, by all means you can do that. If you don't have one and are interested in maybe doing one, you have to be careful on what type of chemicals you put on the plastic and paint on this without damaging it. So unless you have a specific thing you're looking for, a alcohol-based disinfectant probably is a good recommendation just overall to use on this. And that is basically our daily maintenance. All right, so now we want to go through the weekly operator maintenance on our sterilizer. And one of the biggest things on that is to do the water change and clean the chamber and the sterilizer, basically internal parts of the sterilizer. So we're going to be using Chamber Bright, made by Tuttnauer. It's a chemical that is, I believe, very basic, so it's always a good idea to have personal protective equipment, glasses and gloves when you're using this. And we always start this out with a cold start. So our cold start is, the first thing we're going to do is we have to drain our chamber. So we're going to need our bucket and the drain tube that came with your sterilizer. Throw the bucket down there. Our drain tube goes on this here, and then you unscrew this, and then the water will run down through there into your bucket or sink or wherever you want it to go. This is wastewater. You're not going to use it again. Once it's empty and drained, then you can pull that off and close this. You're going to always use distilled water only on your sterilizer. So at this point, we're going to refill with fresh distilled water. We get brand new clean distilled water in our sterilizer. And then we take our package of Chamber Bright. It's a powdery, crystally powder kind of thing in this pack. You rip this open, we remove our trays, and they actually also recommend that you remove the tray rack as well. So we're going to take the tray rack out and get that out of our way. It slides out. And then we're going to take our package of Chamber Bright, we rip it open, and we kind of pour it along the bottom of our chamber in a line across the bottom. All right. Once we are done with that, we're going to close our door and latch it, and we are going to run a wrap cycle. So we'll run a wrap cycle on this, turn the power on, hit wrap cycle, let it run through its whole cycle. The Chamber Bright will get in there and it'll loosen up and clean a lot of the stuff that builds up inside your sterilizer over a period of time, including inside the plumbing, which is a very difficult area to keep clean, and it will definitely prolong the life of your sterilizer if you keep that clean. So you run your cycle. When you're all done, it will get to a point where it says where it's going to go into the dry cycle. At the dry cycle, you can hit the stop button because we don't need the dry cycle. We'll hit the stop button, and once your pressure is down to 0, you can open your door again, and we are going to, at that point, drain again the water that we just put in there, but now it has chamber bright in it. We're going to put that on there. We're going to drain it into our sink or our bucket or wherever and dispose of that. Close our chamber drain again, or our reservoir drain again, and close this up again. And again, we're going to take another fresh batch of distilled water and we're going to fill it here in our reservoir. If you don't have one of these dipsticks, sometimes they have a tendency to get broken off. If you have one, we can get you one if you want one, or you can just kind of fill this thing up until, if you look down inside here, you'll see there's the brass works of it. It's sitting up near the top. Just make sure the water is below the level of the brass pieces inside there. So we're going to refill it with water, and then we're going to run a rinse cycle. Now all these cycles, the first clean cycle and the rinse cycle, are with no instruments or anything inside. Nothing that you want to sterilize, because you don't want to introduce your instruments or whatever to the chemicals. So then we run a unwrap cycle, and we let it go through that cycle. When it's done, when it goes into, it finishes its sterilization cycle and goes into the vent. The vent will complete when it goes into the dry cycle. Again, you can hit stop to stop the cycle. We don't need to go through that part of the cycle. At that point, we open our door again. Again, we take our drain tube and we drain out the rinse water that we just used, and we dispose of that. At that point, again, you take another fresh batch of distilled water, refill your sterilizer, and at this point, there is a button here that is a fill, that if you have the unit on, you press that for like press it for 2 seconds. Some water from your reservoir will run into your chamber, and you're going to let it run in there just a little bit. That flushes out a little bit of the extra water that's left inside the pipes there, and then you take a clean rag or something and you wipe that all out of there to get that out. You're also going to, at that point, take another clean rag. You can wet it with distilled water and wipe out the whole inside of the chamber and get it all nice and clean, including here around the door and everything. At this point, there's one other item in the back here. If you look in the very back of the sterilizer, there is a filter. It's like a little screen on the left, but on the right, there's like a little button that sticks up just a little bit. That is your water level sensor. It's a good idea to take your distilled water on a rag and you clean the edges of that. It's just a little thing that sticks up maybe 1/4 of an inch, and it's got like a white edge around it. It's important to get the edges clean. That's your water level sensor, so it knows when there's enough water in here when you start your cycle. It'll automatically fill to that level. So if that gets really dirty, it can get confused about the water level and it'll cause it not to operate properly. So a weekly cleaning of that is a great thing. Again, there is one other thing. Next to that water level sensor, there's a little screen filter. This little screen, it just pops in the hole there. We just make sure that's not clogged up with any debris. Clean it with a little brush if you have to, or rinse it off. A lot of times it looks perfectly fine, like this one. And then that goes back into that little hole in the back there, and it just pushes in, nice and easy. We're going to return our tray rack to the sterilizer. Slides in like that. Now the tray rack and the tray, it's also a good idea to maybe clean those a little bit. So wipe those down. And one thing that you can use if there is some discoloration or buildup of material on here, there's a product called Barkeeper's Friend, and it is made without any chlorine additives to it. Chlorine and stainless steel do not go together. You should never ever use anything with chlorine in it to clean your sterilizer, chamber, rack, or trays. So Barkeeper's Friend does not have it, and you can use that to clean this. Just make sure that once you clean this all up, you rinse it real good, wipe it down before you start using it for your sterilization. But Barkeeper's Friend is a really nice cleaner that does not contain any chlorine. The last thing we have to do is take a thin oil. such as 3-in-1 oil or any kind of household oil. I don't recommend a spray oil, but you can, but just something that comes in a drip container. And the things we want to oil are here on our hinge. Just put a little drop of oil on the moving parts of the hinge, and also on our door latch, put a little drop of oil on the threads there, part that moves in and out, and that will help prolong the life of your door and your door latch mechanism. At that point, that is all ready to go. All right. So the last part of this is we're going to step away, but we're going to show you how to clean the air jet and the safety valve. Just a warning, and I'll remind you later, the safety valve, they're both right in here under your fill cover. The safety valve, when you're testing that, you're going to get a burst of steam out of there, and we'll show you how that is going to look. But I want you to be aware that that's going to happen and take precaution. Don't have your face near it. You might want to put a pair of gloves on other than latex gloves, something just to protect you. And we'll use probably something like a screwdriver, and we'll go and show you how that works in just a second. All right, so there's 2 steps that I wanted to show you actually in action on this sterilizer, this Tuttnauer. One is the bleeder valve cleaning, which should be done weekly. When you look in there, you'll see this little wire loop. You take a screwdriver or a pointed device or something, and you just kind of wiggle it side to side, front to back, and that keeps that orifice there open and flowing freely. If that gets clogged up with debris, it will cause poor performance of your sterilizer. It could cause the failure of spore tests or indicator strips, and it could cause you to not get proper sterilization. So once a week, you just kind of wiggle that thing back and forth a little bit. The second thing in here is the safety valve, which is recommended that it get tested annually. And the purpose of that is to kind of clean it out so that the sealing surfaces of that move and don't get stuck together in a emergency situation. This is supposed to relieve pressure if the pressure got too high in the chamber. So we just want to make sure it's not sticking and that it's working. Now I'll warn you, when you do this, a lot of steam might come out of here, so keep your face clear. You may want to wear some kind of more protective gloves if you prefer. You're going to need something like a screwdriver or device, and you're going to reach down in there and you're going to hook your screwdriver into the, you're going to try to hook it into the little thing, looks like a key ring. And then you pull it to the side, and I'm going to do it, and you'll see what happens here. And you get a blast. You hold it open for a couple seconds. If for some reason it doesn't immediately close when you release, just wiggle it a couple more times. It should seal back up. But you're going to get a good blast of steam out of there. Again, make sure you keep your face and your hand clear. Use something long enough to reach down in there to keep yourself safely away. And that is the policy. That's the testing of that. Now with that said, during our annual PM, Zoetek does this for you. So I'm showing you this part in case you're inclined to try to do it yourself. But if you want, we'll just do this during our regular routine PM. However, the bleeder valve, that is a weekly thing that's done by the operator, and that is much easier to do. And that can be done cold or hot, it doesn't matter. All right, thank you. All right, so the last thing that we always recommend is an annual PM, which a service that's provided by Zoetek. And during that PM, a lot of the common failure parts are replaced to help prolong and enhance the operation of your sterilizer. There's a bunch of things. We do replace the door gasket and such, and there's some seals inside. There's a HEPA filter on the side that goes on during the vent cycle that is sort of difficult to replace, so we do get in there and we replace that. We check voltages and we check temperatures and pressures using our calibrated equipment. And we also, well, like I said, we replace the door gaskets. There's a couple other seals in here. Some are safety seals for a door lock so that you can't open the door while it's under pressure. That needs to be rebuilt annually for safety. And we also test your safety valve as well, make sure that's working correctly. So, and replace a few other parts that are common failures. So that is pretty much what we do on our PM in a nutshell, I guess. And we thank you for watching ZoetekMedical.com. and keep an eye open for more tech tips, and feel free to contact us at any time if you have any questions about anything we've covered or anything else that we can help you with. We'd be more than happy to help you out. I'm Blaise Midnight for Zoetek Medical. Thank you for watching.